Tansy. The creative team at Nickle-Eye's Plant Adventures would like to acknowledge that we are filming on Treaty 6 territory at Amiskwa-Skikwa-Squagan, also known as the Beaver Hill House. We would like to acknowledge and thank all the Indigenous people of Turtle Island. We wouldn't be where we are today without their stewardship of the land and all their unique nations and teachings. I hope to honor my heritage and ancestors by passing down the importance of nature and storytelling through this show. We keep our cultures alive through the stories we tell, and I hope someday to hear yours as well. Miigwech. Hi. It is mid-fall here at the Beaver House, and we just experienced our first snowfall. Most of the trees are pretty bare. You can see a few tiny buds, but all the leaves have gone. This one still has some leaves. See? 3 little leaves. This one still has most of its leaves. I wonder why. I appreciate that it's so colorful. I love all the reds, oranges, and dark browns. There's even a little bit of green. It's very beautiful. I wonder what will happen to all these things under the snow. Like this bark. Or these leaves. Or this big, long piece of grass. You can see the grains at the top. What will happen to all of this? I decide to investigate. There may be snow outside, but there's still so much more to learn about plants. Hello everyone, it's great to see you again. On our last adventure, we went on a walk to identify some carnivorous trees. Carnivorous trees are also known as evergreens. We had to take a close look at them to identify what they were. We would look at their needles and if they were sheathed or unsheathed. We also smelled them and played around with them to figure out what they were. After we were done identifying some trees, we came back to work on a craft, knitting and crochet. Knitting is very tricky for me. I'm not the best at using knitting needles, but I can use a crochet hook, and I can also knit using my fingers. At the end of our adventure, I shared a story with you that's very special to me. It's a Ukrainian myth about why they put spider webs in their Christmas trees. I hoped you liked it as much as I did. Now let's go off on our next adventure. Hi there! Today I'm exploring the river. At the Beaver Hill House, the river is very important. We built our city around it. There are many walking paths to explore. The river provides water and nourishment to all the people, plants, and animals that live here. There are some plants that live in the water. What happens to them during the winter? How do they live under the ice? How do any plants and animal live in this cold? Let's go investigate. Look, there's a squirrel. This reminds me of a pika. Pikas are small rabbit-type animals. They have round ears like squirrels. They live in northern Alberta and close to the Northern Territories. They have a special way of surviving. Peter told me all about it at the museum.
They're relatives of rabbits, but they have little round ears, maybe look a little bit more like a guinea pig, but they are closely related to rabbits. And they do a really cool thing where they create these hay stacks or hay piles. So they're going and foraging on plants and stacking up a pile that's basically going to be what they're eating through the wintertime, hiding it under a rock somewhere that they can easily access, even though they're under that big blanket of snow. And what I think is really interesting about these guys is they have some very intimate knowledge of the plants and what is good and what is bad. So they will actually cut certain types of wildflowers and plants that actually have a poison in them that they couldn't eat, and they'll put those into the haystack of the pile of the other plants, and they're using these toxic plants almost as a preservative. It's a way to make sure that the other food doesn't go bad. By the time they work their way down the hay pile throughout the winter that they're hiding out, they may get to the point where they reach those poisonous plants and they're not poisonous anymore because all the poison has been used up preventing the rot of the other ones. There are other types of plants that they will not harvest until fall, and it's because those plants are so poisonous, they have so many toxins in their leaves and stems that it would actually make the little pika sick. But if they wait until fall, the plants take all those poisons, pull them out of their leaves and stems, and store them back underground in the roots. So the pika can actually harvest that plant later in the season and eat it all winter long, but if they tried to eat it in the spring and summer, they'd get sick. So that tells me those pikas have some pretty good, they know their plants very well, better than we do, and know how to stack them so that they've got food through the winter.
When exploring the river at any time of year, it's important to be safe. Here are some precautions to take during the winter. Be mindful if you are on land or on ice. If you walk too far on the ice, you could fall into the fast-moving water below. The ice on rivers is dangerous. For today's adventure, we are going to stay on the shore. There is still so much to observe there. When walking by the river, I saw this cliffside. This happens a lot by rivers because they'll erode the dirt beside them. I wonder what lives in all those little holes. Look, not all the water froze. I think that's so weird. It's so cold, but I read about why that happens.
Okay, so when we think about the river in the wintertime, you're going to see a layer of snow and a pretty thick layer of ice over the top. But underneath that, we still see that there's liquid water that's still flowing. And some of that has to do with how fast the water is moving, how much there is of it, and how deep it is. But it also that kind of speaks to the fact that that layer of snow on the top acts almost like a blanket. All those little ice crystals are sort of piled on top of each other. And in between them, there's all these little air bubbles, air spaces. So it works much like a blanket and helps to sort of insulate that.
That seems really strange, snow and ice being insulators, trapping in the heat. But it's true. The Inuit people of Turtle Island learned this a long time ago from watching nature. Inuits made this observation. Then they used the snow and ice to make their homes, known as igloos. Other plants and animals have creative ways to survive the winter too. Some spiders, other bugs, and plants will make antifreeze. Antifreeze is a liquid that freezes at a temperature lower than 0 degrees Celsius.
We use synthetic man-made antifreeze in our cars to help them run in below freezing temperatures. But some animals and plants do it themselves. Both terrestrial, meaning plants living on land, and water plants will also shrink down into a small size to survive the winter. Having less leaves and petals and stem to take care of means they can save energy and food, so they can survive longer. To look at bugs, this is why I think winter is so cool. It is harsh, but it requires creative thinking to survive in it for both plants, animals, and humans. Humans around the world also use cold winter nights as an excuse to throw elaborate celebrations. A local festival we have here is the Flying Canoe. It is a festival inspired by a myth using the same name. It celebrates French, Métis, and First Nations cultures. They have a little area for each that you can walk through. First Nations is an umbrella term used for the various nations that lived here on Turtle Island for millennia. They are all unique but share some similarities, like having a nature-based religion. This can be seen in the stories they tell. They talk about Creator. Animals like fox and eagle or otter play huge roles. Plants also play an important role, like tobacco and sweetgrass. I loved all the lights at the Flying Canoe Festival. They're all so cool. It was so cold that night. You can see my breath. I loved being around all the lights. It was so calm and relaxing. I loved seeing all the different things incorporated in the lights. I loved seeing this little movie. I loved seeing all the different things incorporated in the lights, like snowshoes and wheels and skis. It was so creative. Many Indigenous people of Turtle Island use syllabics like these to write their languages. French people are from Europe. They arrived in Turtle Island in around the 1700s. They came with their own beliefs and way of life. They speak French, and its alphabet looks similar to English, but there's a few extra letters. Métis people are people that have parents from First Nation and French or other European cultures. You could say Métis is a hybrid culture, a mixture of these two cultures, just like the carnivorous trees we saw a while ago. For example, I am Métis. My mom is Nehiwa, and my dad is Ukrainian. Métis culture is all about finding ways to integrate First Nations teachings and European ones. It's a beautiful mixture that makes Métis culture unique and special. The Flying Canoe Festival is all about showcasing the beautiful art and technology from all three of these cultures. There's ice sculptures, teepees, and of course canoes. But it's also filled with all these beautiful lights. They're amazing. They remind me of the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis. I look forward to coming back someday, and I hope you decide to go too. That was a lot of fun. Now I want to make my own canoe. Nickle-Eye's Guide to Making Your Own Canoes. What you'll need: toilet paper rolls, wax crayons, markers, pencil crayons, and tape. The steps to take. First, squish your toilet paper roll. Next, cut a slight curve into the edges. watch here. I turn my scissors to make the curve. And then I cut it in half. Next, I color. Today I want to do a little experiment. I want to see if I can waterproof a canoe. I've read that you can waterproof canoes by coloring them in wax crayon. The wax will make a water-repellent layer. I want to see if there's other ways I can waterproof this. First, we'll start with crayon. When you're coloring, make sure you fill in as much as you can. If you leave holes, that could lead the canoe to sink. I decided to also color canoes with pencil crayons and markers. From what I read, pencil crayons and markers will not waterproof the canoe because it won't have a water-repellent layer on it. But we'll try anyways. Again, I'm trying to color them all in, making sure it's completely covered. I'm very focused coloring. Here we go. All colored in. Now I put on some tape. There's two ways you can do this. You can do what I did here and do a small little strip for each side. This one I cut it too short, so I'll need another piece. And I put a little piece of cardboard inside to keep it propped open. Sadly, it's just not staying taped very well. Now, it's time to test my little canoes. First, here's the marker one. But all of them got wet, including my crayon one. What happened? Well, this happens sometimes in science. Sometimes we make little mistakes and things don't happen the way we expect it to. But that's okay. It gives us an opportunity to try better next time. But that's okay. What should we do next? Wait, I haven't told you the flying canoe myth yet, have I? Let's fix that. Let me set the stage. There. That looks fitting. The myth of the flying canoe. Once upon a time, a group of lumberjacks worked hard in eastern Canada, close to Quebec. It was in the middle of winter and it was close to New Year. They didn't want to be working. They wanted to be home with their family, their girlfriends. But what could they do? How could they get back home? One man had a smart idea. While no one was looking, he wandered off into the woods and summoned the devil. The devil came up. Who awoke me? I did, sir. I would like a canoe, a flying canoe. A flying canoe? Well, fine, you may have one. Under 2 rules. First, you may not speak the name of God. And you must not fly over a church steeple. And then the devil disappeared and left the canoe for the man. The man brought the canoe back to his friends. They all jumped in and sailed off into the sky. They flew over the tops of the trees, zooming by everything. They kept going till they went home. There, their girlfriends were waiting outside. They were so happy to see them. They partied and danced throughout the night. As it drew closer to the end of the night, the lumberjacks tried to gather up to get back into the canoe. They needed to get back before sunrise. But they couldn't find one. They kept looking for him everywhere. He was asleep on the ground. They tried to wake him up, but he just wouldn't budge, so they dragged him back to the canoe and threw him in. They all quickly jumped into the canoe and started to fly off again. As the canoe was flying, the sleeping man woke. "Oh my God, where am I?" And with that, the canoe started to rumble. The promise was broken, and the canoe crashed into the mountainside and into a bunch of trees to never be found again. And that is the story of the flying canoe, at least how I remember it. There are many variations of this story. If you've heard any, let me know. I love to hear the differences. Until next time, see you.